Hello and welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you all are doing well today. Today we are going to be jumping into this 1960s Girard Perregaux Gyromatic. Automatic movements were considered a huge phenomenon when they first were released. Instead of having to wind one's watch every day, one could simply wear it and know that with sufficient power reserve, their watch would continue to run and keep time. Girard Perregaux is a Swiss watch manufacturer that in 1852 was founded as Girard Cie in Chaux-de-Fonds by Constant Girard. Throughout its history, the company has produced exceptional watches. In the 1950s, like many other brands, the company was faced with demand for self-winding wristwatches, and in 1957 the brand released their first automatic movement known as the 21 series. But to consumers at the time, Girard Perregaux coined the name Gyromatic, which you can actually see on the dial of this watch. Thus, the first serially produced automatic wristwatch from the brand was born. As the brand went into the 1960s, the company began using what is known as the 31 and 32 series. These movements were based on ebauche movements by AS, and according to some, were exclusively used by Girard Perregaux for a few years. The watch today is part of the 32 series versions of the Gyromatic. To describe the watch, what we have is a 33mm Gyromatic that was manufactured in the 1960s. The watch has a steel case that is in overall nice condition, with signs of wear, which are kind of expected for a watch of this age. Besides the signs of wear, the watch has a really impressive and quite strong case. As you can see, the lugs are fairly sharp and overall very attractive. There are very few signs of polishing, if any, on this watch, which I think makes it that much more beautiful. The watch has moderate-sized lugs that make the watch sit pretty true to size. If you look, they don't angle too steeply towards the wrist. They're honestly quite a common angle, and so it makes the 33mm watch sit basically true to size. The watch has a white silver dial that is extremely clean and really attractive. It has applied hour markers in a very sort of roller explorer-esque fashion with the numbers at 6, 9, and 12. I think it really is a phenomenally beautiful example of the Gyromatic, and to be honest is a really nice steel vintage watch in its appearance. The watch has a signed crown, which you probably saw when I showed you the profile, but you can see that it is signed with GP. And it also has a date window at 3 o'clock, which you can see there. The way that the dial is designed allows for the date window to go fairly unnoticed for those who feel that that date windows distract and sort of cloud and make the dial seem a little bit more cramped. It doesn't have what one would expect, which is a silver outline of that window. Typically, that's how watch companies would design these dials. So it integrates quite seamlessly with the dial, and it's not too distracting when one sees it. The watch runs, as I mentioned, on an automatic Gyromatic movement that is part of the 32 series. These movements were 11.5 lines and produced from 1962 through to the mid-1970s. Of course, one of the things that is always exciting to do when you have vintage watches is look at any inscriptions that you have on things like the case back of the watch. You can see that the case back is signed with stainless steel. That describes the case metal, and when you take the case back off and you look at the inside of the case back, one will also see that the case metal stamping of stainless steel is shown. You will also get the Girard Perregaux stamp on the inside case back. If you look at the movement, one can see that the rotor is signed with Girard Perregaux and also has the Gyromatic name on it. It's a pretty simple automatic movement. As I mentioned, it's a modified ebauche, so a fairly robust automatic movement from Girard Perregaux. If you look at the movement, the bridge that suspends the balance wheel is signed with GXM. GXM was the import code from Girard Perregaux used when they imported movements from Switzerland to the USA, so it's likely that this watch was imported and sold in this market. Girard Perregaux actually began this practice in about 1936, making this probably about 60 years after they originally started to do that. And then around this time period, the importing of movements, you don't really see a lot of stamps on movements like that too often. As I mentioned, the watch is 33 millimeters in diameter. I can show you what it looks like on my wrist. I'll just take off the watch that I am wearing, which is actually a really nice, if you are a fan of Life on the Wrist, you've probably seen this watch before, but it's a Memo Sale Yacht Timer, one of my first ever vintage watches that I purchased personally, and then also one of my absolute favorites in terms of complication layout. So if we're looking at this watch on the wrist, as I mentioned, it's a 33 millimeter stainless steel case. You can see that the lugs don't accentuate the case size any too much. It doesn't make the watch sit smaller either, so you're really looking at a true to size 33 millimeter case. To me, I think this watch is a great example of how Girard Perregaux met the demand for automatic movements that came about in the 1950s and 1960s. The watch is really a no-nonsense stainless steel watch that is incredibly legible, wearable, and houses a fairly iconic movement from the brand. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this 1960s Girard Perregaux Gyromatic. I think it's really interesting to think about the fact that this watch was really released by Girard Perregaux to compete in the automatic wristwatch sort of sector of watchmaking. One kind of sometimes takes automatic movements for granted because it's something that you get so often with pieces nowadays. But during this time period, brands were fiercely competing to have their watches be worn by consumers because they because of the fact that this was such a new innovation. Everyone, kind of like during the quartz crisis, everyone wanted to be wearing an automatic movement. It was the new novelty. So it's quite cool to think about this piece in that context and how it was kind of not revolutionizing, but really was competing against many other brands during that time period. So a very nice piece. As always, we'll have an article on lifeonthewrist.com about this Girard Perregaux. If you want to see pictures of the movement and inside case back, I encourage you to check out our article. It will be the first link in the description of this video if you want to check that out and see some of the pictures and read a little bit about it. I encourage you to head over to lifeonthewrist.com. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this Girard Perregaux Gyromatic. I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially my question that I want you to answer is, in the 1960s, if you had a choice of a wristwatch, would you have gone for this Girard Perregaux Gyromatic, or was there another brand that you think would have caught your eye during the 1960s? So let me know in the comment section below what your answer to that question is. If you are new to Life on the Wrist, be sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with a friend who might be interested in watches. If you wouldn't mind liking this video, it really does help me out. With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time.